Allen West is one of the great legacy leaders in the United States. Elected to the United States Congress in 2010, he actually represented Rush Limbaugh in his own backyard there in Palm Beach, Florida. Now he's in Texas. He is the former executive director of the National Center for Policy Analysis. And I think he's probably one of the great educators for America and probably early warning voices regarding the destruction of the American military and the way in which the woke Marxist ideology has gotten into through the universities, into politics, corporations, and media. And we're right now experiencing a hostile takeover of government by this ideology. But he lays it out in a way you've never heard before, and I want you to hear it. People, by the way, have been asking me, Lance, when you look at the threats that are out there, what's the number one threat that you see? And I would tell you that the economic picture is the one that I'm most interested in, because you see, America is only propped up with its bizarre $30 to $35 trillion worth of spending and the $5 trillion more that Biden wants to do as long as he or Kamala are in office. And it's literally going to be the undoing of us by our own self-destruction. The BRICS nations right now, and you got to catch this, Brazil, now that Lula's been, in my opinion, illegally put in as president, but Lula, and then China, Russia, India, the world's largest populations, the world's largest economies, are banding together to take America out. And I'm going to suggest to you that the only way that you can protect your wealth is to find a currency the whole world works in at the point where they get rid of the dollar. And that's gold, that's silver, that's certain commodities. Wealth is always going to be on the earth, folks. The Antichrist, the Bible says, is going to cause people to prosper. Money's going to be moving around. But you want to be wise and put your wealth in something that retains the value, and it's not the dollar. It'll be gold, it'll be silver. Get the 21-page analysis I've been pushing. And people come up to me all the time in conferences like this week. Well, Lance, what do you think? I've been saying to you, go to lancewallnau.com/Birch. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. You don't have to be ignorant of how to protect what you've got. Haggai the prophet said, the silver's mine, the gold is mine, and I'm going to direct it into my building projects. I pray to God that you are a building project, that God is preserving his church in the earth. lancewallnau.com/Birch. Go there. Read the information and take your IRA or whatever you have, roll it over into that gold value, no penalty, no cost, and you'll be happy that you did. Let's get into listening to this Allen West interview. Welcome to the Lance Wallnau Show, all of you that are here tuning in, and for you that are watching for the first time. Here's what we do. We talk about current events, but we do it from what I would say is a biblical conservative perspective, because I found that there's a reliability in threading things through this book, because oddly enough, the Word of God is constant. It's almost like a compass. I could find out where things are going off on the left, the right, up or down, just by opening up these eternal words. You know, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God, is what Jesus quoted during the great temptations that he had. And I'm always amazed. We have Lieutenant Colonel Allen West as our guest again today. And I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get a hold of what you've written, and your story is really remarkable. Oh, I mean, thanks. We were talking earlier, you were the congressional representative for like Ann Coulter, Rush Limbaugh were in your district.
It's amazing. I was born in 1961 in a blacks-only hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. And when I was born, blacks could not go on Palm Beach Island. 50 years later, I was the congressional representative of the highest per capita income zip code in the United States of America at that time, which was Palm Beach Island. And that's the American story. That's why we don't need this whole diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff. We just need to have that equality of opportunity that says no matter where you're born, no matter where you come from, you set your dreams, your sights, your goals, and you can make it here in the United States of America. But it starts with, number one, having a good, strong family. Number two, having a good quality education, and also having yourself rooted in a good, strong Christian faith.
An unbeatable trifecta, folks. The name of the book is?
We Can Overcome. An American Black Conservatives Manifesto, because I think right now, everyone needs to really understand that Black conservatism is not something that just happened in the last 10 or 20 years. My ideological mentor is Booker T. Washington, a man that was born into slavery, but when he became free, he only wanted one thing, Lance. He wanted an education. And he pretty much so went from present-day West Virginia to Hampton Institute, Hampton, Virginia, walked a good portion of that, slept under wooden sidewalks, earning money on his way over. And he became one of the greatest orators and educators in the history of this country. A man that was a slave who, next thing you know, he is eating with President Teddy Roosevelt in the White House. He is having President McKinley visit his school, Tuskegee Normal Industrial Institute, and he had a 3-point agenda: education, entrepreneurship, and self-reliance. That was it. And so I think there's so much that we can learn about those early people that, really did get the Black community moving on a right direction coming out of slavery.
Powerful, powerful. And by the way, they can get that on Amazon. We Can Overcome. And you have a podcast that is,
Yes.
And the name of the podcast, so people can look it up?
Steadfast and Loyal. And Steadfast and Loyal is the motto of the 4th Infantry Division. That was the division that I commanded a battalion in out of Fort Hood, Texas, and I deployed them to Iraq in 2003.
I'm amazed, Colonel, that man shall not live by bread alone. God didn't say Christians. These ideas that we're talking about regarding right and wrong aren't just a religious orthodoxy for a Christian community. Yeah. They're applicable to all humanity. I mean, gender, it clarifies something, male and female. And if you ever confuse that...
This portion is too hot to handle for social media. Go to lancewallnow.com/podcast to listen to the entire show.
But when Joshua was taking over the great multitude from Moses, God told him in chapter 1, verse 5 through 9, he told him 3 times. He said, be strong and of good courage. But one of the critical things he told him was that this book of the law, you shall meditate upon it day and night. You shall not turn from it from the right or to the left. For as long as you do that, you will have success and prosperity wherever you go. Have I not commanded you to be strong and of good courage? And so the only time that Joshua failed was when he did not follow the guidance of the Lord, which is the first battle of Ai. Then when he corrected himself, then he continued to be successful. And then when you turn over to the final farewell speech of Joshua in chapter 24, where he says to the people, choose for yourselves today whom you shall serve, being the gods of the Amorites or the gods from across the river. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And of course, he said that all the children of Israel, you're going to be witness to the Lord, that you will continue to serve him. And they said, we will be witnesses. We will continue to serve him. But when you flip over into Judges, the next book, and start in chapter 2, verse 10, and it says that the generations of Joshua and those afterwards died off. And the children of Israel began to worship the Baals. And it all went downhill. The anger of the Lord burned against them. So I think it's so important that, I remember... Do
you see a parallel there between there and the United States?
Total parallel. That's why I'm telling people is that, this country, there is no way this country gets established by taking on the greatest power that the world knew at that time, 247 years ago. And look at what we have achieved. Look at what we have come from in 247 years. People talk about slavery. We corrected slavery within, 7 years?
Yeah, right. It took England 1,000 years to get it right with Wilberforce. We did it within our first 100 years.
Within our first 100 years.
You don't hear that story.
No, you're not going to hear that story. And so all of the things that have made this nation great was because it was rooted in this Judeo-Christian faith heritage. When you read the book Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville, this Frenchman wanted to come to see what is going on in America that makes it so successful, so prosperous. This fledgling of a nation that was just
Right.
13 rotten colonies, back a few years ago. And he said it's the strength of their families and it's the strength of their conviction and their belief and their faith. And so it comes back to what God told Joshua. This book of the law, you shall meditate upon it day and night, not turn from it from the right or to the left, and you will have success and prosperity wherever you go. Now look at what we've done. We've drifted away from it, and we've been given over to the plunderers. Look at what's happened with our borders. Look at what has happened with, Islamic jihadism coming in and attacking us. All of these things. Our children
Are you
being
concerned
killed.
about the number of people coming over the border? And they've apprehended now, I think, like 175 known terrorists, and they're only catching 1 out of 5 people coming over the border.
Yes.
So right away it tells you you've got terrorists that are coming through the border.
Yes, and it is not just that national security issue. You're talking about 5 to 7 million, but you've got 1.5 to 2 million of the gotaways, the people that we know have gotten in. We have no means by which of tracing them. The big thing we should be concerned about is single military-age males that are coming across that border. Now to include...
Trump said that early on, and I didn't quite catch. I mean, he said it. He said, look at all those. You're not seeing women and children a lot. You're seeing a lot of men coming over that
18 to 45.
that are fighting age.
That's right.
Fit men coming over. And right away, as a commander in chief, he's thinking, that ain't good.
No, that's what I'm looking at. I want you to think about this. Our United States Army active duty strength is, I think, about 500, 600,000. We have allowed in 5 to 7 million in the last 2.5 years, to include now Chinese single military age males as well. So you're allowing some very bad people to get foot soldiers into this country. And you have to be very concerned about
But I'm comforted to know, Colonel, that our Homeland Security is keeping an eye on Catholics in their services.
Or parents, the real domestic terrorists.
At board meeting, at education, because we know that they are the domestic threat.
They are. But again, it comes back to what we talked about yesterday. Anything that is a threat to the ideological agenda, the religion of the left, that is their real enemy. They don't care about the people that are going to come in here that they could leverage for votes.
Man, this is so sick if that's true.
But it is true.
What you're saying is true. It's like when I read Horowitz, who said the number one problem with Christians especially and conservatives in general is that you think your enemy is like you. You think that they just think different and that they're trying to sort things out. Like you hear Joe Rogan, his naive world is just like everybody's trying to work things out. The left isn't trying to work things out. They're actually trying to destroy you. You are trying to create a world where the two of you can figure out how to make it work, and their agenda actually is driven to hate you and destroy you. So you're not working with somebody that's actually a good faith partner in this.
No.
They have an agenda to take you out.
Is this mentality of come let us reason together. You cannot reason with a person like this. It's just the same when I was in the combat zone with my troops. I said, don't think like you. Think like your enemy. And that's why I would recommend to people to read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, because you've got to get inside the decision cycle of your opponent. They are telling you exactly who they are. They are doing exactly what they want to do. And then they're saying, you're just too cowardly enough to stand up and confront us. H.L. Richardson, who is a state senator from California, wrote an incredible book called Confrontational Politics. That's something that Christians should read.
Confrontational politics. Well, here we go. Get your pen out, folks. Confrontational Politics by H.L. Richardson. And what's the premise of his
The premise is
book?
that you are dealing with people that know you don't want to engage them. That look at what is happening right now. Everyone knows that the Biden administration is corrupt, but they don't care. They don't think you're going to do anything. They don't think that you're going to impeach Joe Biden. Now, when they were in charge, they impeached President Trump over a hoax. Twice. They impeached him over a phone call because they don't care.
And what an irony. I have to put a parentheses around it. What an irony that they impeached him because he said, check out corruption with Hunter in Ukraine.
Yes.
Which is ironically what we're about to find out. It'll be Romania, Ukraine, China, corruption. Trump was actually right.
Yes. And that's why they impeached him. And think about this. They were going to impeach him before he even got into office. Maxine Waters out there leading chance, impeach 45. Over what? We'll find something to impeach him on. So you cannot sit here and say that we are going to reason with people that want to kill you and want to destroy you and want to destroy this country.
Do you, we've got 58 seconds left on this first segment. By the way, your podcast is accessible where?
It's accessible on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, and all of the other
Can they find it by looking up Colonel Allen West, or do they look up?
Steadfast and Loyal.
Steadfast and Loyal?
Steadfast and Loyal.
You want to make sure that you get a hold of that. Are you doing that daily?
What we do is we tape on a full day and we drip segments out throughout the week.
Very good. And so we're going to be talking about the 5 or 6 pillars of the takeover of the United States. And if you look at this, it's a unified system of thought: open borders, gender dysphoria, LGBTQ, same-sex marriage, environmentalism, DEI, Planned Parenthood, abortion. These are actually if you had the Apostles' Creed, this is the Apostles' Creed of the progressives. And you got to know it because they treat it like a religion. We'll be right back. You don't want to miss part 2. I wanted to take a minute to talk about one of my great heroes of the faith, which is Mike Lindell. What's really cool about Mike is it's not just the pillow. It's the fact that the guy makes really cool products. For instance, I start my day off with my coffee. I had a cup of coffee the other day here in the office, and I said, no, I want that. It wasn't like Starbucks. It tastes better. And it was Mike's coffee. I said, what is it? They go, Mike Lindell's coffee. I said, my gosh, get a bunch of my coffees. Now, the best way to start the day is you put on these slippers, right? And have your My Coffee. If you've not worked with these slippers yet, I'm not kidding you. There's a special kind of design that Mike has put into these with 4 layers of cushion with a solid sole and a fur interior. I call it my sip and slip strategy. I start my day off by slipping on my slippers and having a sip of Mike's coffee. But you know what else I'm curious about now? Because I've got to check out the 2.0 pillow. The 2.0 pillow actually is designed so that it distributes the heat of your own head, your face. You know, you're lying there, and it makes it so the pillow's always cool. Now, I like that because I wake up in the middle of the night and have to flip over my pillow because it gets hot. Mike's solved that problem. I want you to go to mypillow.com, promo code Lance, because you can get a discount that I've set up for the pillows, for the coffee, and for the slippers. And do it today. You'll be happy. Welcome back to the Lance Wallnau Show. We're working on our 12 millionth download. Can you believe it? Since we started like a year and a half, 2 years ago. There are people out there, in spite of tech suppression, there still is a wild west in the podcast world, and somehow people find us. Please share this, like this, whatever channel you're on. No doubt, YouTube's a problem. We don't know whether we'll be able to survive that. They wiped out 200,000 of my followers in one fell swoop. Somebody in pajamas one day just said, get rid of that, guys.
And who would have ever thought that in the United States of America, you would have a government working with private sector organizations to suppress the freedom of speech, freedom of expression of American citizens?
Twitter got proof, thanks, since Elon Musk took over Twitter. We now have that happen. And then the guy that's on the Hill, the journalist, not even a conservative.
Mike Taibbi.
Yeah, and he's testifying. And like the day that he starts to testify, the IRS goes to visit him at this house and begin an audit of his life. Weaponized government, my friends. I'm telling you, it's like the Communist Party's running the woke Marxist Democrat Party. It's almost the same playbook. How did we get here?
Well, one of the things that the Army taught me, if you're in the Air Force, you're smart. You don't have to write stuff down. But in the Army, we have to write stuff down. Marines write stuff down in crayons. We at least use an ink pen. But this is how we got here. This is a quote, and I'll tell you who did it at the end. The uncontested absurdities of today are the accepted slogans of tomorrow. They come to be accepted by degrees, by dint of constant pressure on one side and constant retreat on the other, until one day when they are suddenly declared to be the country's official ideology. Ayn Rand, written in the 1950s. Incrementalism, Lance. That's how we have gotten to this point. and we have not paid attention to it. It's kind of like in college football, first down, you pick up 3 or 4 yards. Second down, you pick up another 3 or 4 yards. Third down, you pick up 2 or 3 yards. First down, you continue to march down the field. That's what the left has been doing. They have been doing that in academia. They have been doing that in entertainment. They have been doing that in our courts, that every single operating system of this country. Now they're doing it in our military as well. And so that's where we are.
And what bothers me is that the original name of the show here, it's still, as a matter of fact, it still is on Real America's Voice right before Bannon. The show's called Firewall, because I said, my gosh, this inferno, it has to come up to some point where it stops.
Yes.
But when you have moral relativism and a weak church, remember Jesus warned, he said, listen, you guys can get to the point where you're going to be good for nothing and people will walk over you. In other words, they'll have contempt for you, not just treat you like you're Amish and odd. They'll actually come after you. By the way, the Amish community came out overwhelmingly for Trump. That was one of my hilarious discoveries in going out and doing rallies, was the Lancaster Amish people. They came out. God bless. I don't know why I went down that head trip there. But I'm thinking that right now, America needs to have a firewall built. Do you see a populist movement? Are there any indications that we're not alone, that we're kind of like there is an awakening happening, obviously?
Yes, and I will tell you, you go back to Virginia, their gubernatorial election, when Terry McAuliffe stood on the stage and said that parents do not have a right to decide what their children are being taught. You lit a fire. You created a firewall. And so now all of a sudden you had people that finally realized something that I've been saying for quite some time: the most important elected position in the United States of America, school board. And they started showing up at school board meetings. And then what did the left do in response? We're going to call you domestic terrorists, because now you're stepping into one of our sacred cows. And so if we can really push this thing about parental rights, if we can make sure that, as it says in Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way they should go, so when they grow old, they shall not depart from it. It doesn't say the government trains up your child. It's talking to you, mommy and daddy. And so we got to get mommies and daddies and grandmas and grandpas that are engaged and start reclaiming their children. Because how many times is it going to take to hear Joe Biden, Jill Biden, Kamala Harris, and Karine Jean-Pierre say that your children are not yours? That's the firewall. So if there's anything that can galvanize us, if there's any firewall out there, it's the protection of our children, because the left is showing that they want to destroy our children, which means they want to destroy the future generations, which comes back to, Tommy Tuberville again saying, we're not going to be paying for people in the military to go out and kill their unborn children. I mean, once upon a time, if you're a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, don't you want to give birth to a potential soldier, sailor, airman, Marine? I mean, my dad was a soldier in World War II. I was a soldier. Now, my older brother, he kind of got stupid. He was a Marine. I love Marines. I'm just kidding.
But you're a military family.
But we're a military family. And my nephew is a lieutenant colonel now in the Army. So why would you not want to have this generational service? And so this has to be the firewall.
So why do we have a recruiting problem?
We have a recruiting problem because people don't want to be in a woke military. People,
you hear that, folks? It's so obvious.
Yeah.
It takes dumb, woke socialist Democrats to run a marketing campaign to go to young men that are probably high masculine traits. They want structure. They want an opportunity to demonstrate competence. They want to do something that appeals to a sense of courage and challenge, and then tell them that if you're trans, this is the place for you. That's the CIA. By the way, that's our State Department's advertising, millions of dollars of advertising on how to appeal to growing the military culture by getting gender dysphoric youth to go into the service.
50 years of the all-volunteer force. And at the onset, everyone said it would fail. 50 years, it has not failed, and meeting, recruitment goes until the last 2.5 some odd years. And when you have a Secretary of the Army, Christine Wormuth, who comes out and says, I don't want to recruit future soldiers from families that have generationally served in the Army. I want new types of soldiers. That goes back to, yes, Christine Wormuth, y'all can look it up. That's exactly what the Secretary of the Army said. So in other words, what you have seen in the West family, she is against that. She is against a father who served in World War II in a segregated army, then, has a son who serves as a Marine in combat, another son who, becomes the first officer in the family, and then a grandson who becomes the second officer in the family, commanding battalions. She don't want that. She wants to create this new military that is just going to be a DEI military.
Well,
Army, rather.
So once again, we have, what do you think is going to happen with the confirmation of the Joint Chief of Staff candidate?
I think, and please get your audience to be alert to this and call their senators and say, we do not want Al Sharpton in a military uniform to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and that's General Charles C.Q. Brown. And I think that what the Senate is trying to do is, over this recess period, they think that we'll forget about it. Now's the time to put the pressure on the senators because they're back home in their respective states.
Listen, you guys got to do this. I'm going to see if I can find, there's a website for that. I know that rejectgeneralbrown.org. Go there, get the facts. You don't have to just listen to us. Just go read it for yourself. Rejectgeneralbrown.org. You don't want to have a progressive Marxist rebuilding an army, a military, especially with the deterioration of the Air Force under his command. So the political, I'm curious about your commentary on this. The military is one of the last institutions that's being taken down. So I've taught for 20 years a theory called 7 Mountains of Culture, because they're really hierarchies like a pyramid. There's a remnant at the top that control disproportionate influence. They're elites, typically.
Yeah.
They have gatekeeper authority. They can determine who gets in, who gets out. They become dense overlapping networks to guard their interests.
Yep.
And they are in entertainment, media, corporate, government, education, and the same way that a family and a church ought to be a partnership with a local kind of jurisdiction that's God ordained. All of these systems really become powerful entities if you don't own what's at the top of those high places. Then you end up having the classic Baal problem, where you've got them actually worshiping weird other ideologies.
Yes.
And they're bizarre, So we have that takeover, but the military, within the government mountain, we have it's more complex than people think. It is the judicial, which is the Supreme Court and the courts. Then it's the political here. But then the military becomes that third sacred arm. What happened that produced for us a generation of political generals?
Barack Obama purged a lot of the senior military leadership. He basically looked at them eyeball to eyeball. You're either on board with me or you should go. And that's what he did. And President Trump did not realize how deep this bureaucratic administrative state was, not just on the civilian side, but also on the military side. When you have someone like General Milley, we call him White Rage Milley, you should have looked at him and said, here, you need to probably submit your resignation papers. So we pray that the next president will be from the Republican Party in 2024. What that next president has to do is look at all of these guys, 2-star and above, and say either you're going to be a warfighting combat type of leader and not a political, tool that's looking to climb
doing
the
a
ladder.
social experiment.
Absolutely. And that's what the focus of the military, and that means having a Secretary of Defense and service secretaries that are backing that up and not allowing these politicized generals to rise to the top.
I cannot for the life of me understand how we could have had Afghanistan as the opening act of the Biden's administration and not realize the military's incompetent. I mean, you look at the withdrawal.
I spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan. This was a real sore subject for me. It hurt me. I mean, you can talk to my wife. I had tears in my eyes.
Yes.
And there were many young men and young women who were on the edge because they had seen their friends lose their lives, or they had lost limbs, or some other tragedy. And to see the way that it happened, we put back in charge the people that we had worked so hard to get off the battlefield. The most horrifying thing was the little girls and the women that for the first time in a generation, they had a taste of freedom. Now we snatched it away from them. And watching the Taliban parade about with our weapons and all of this, It was painful.
And give up an air base, which was our only air base with access to China as a disincentive for activity. We just surrendered it. It's like, I am a novice in military strategy, and I just looked at that and I said, someone should have been removed from power, but nothing happened. Nothing. I mean, there was like, I didn't do it. The president says, well, actually, I was under their advice. Well, and they're all denying responsibility.
Yeah. Those 11 Marines, 1 sailor, 1 soldier who lost their lives at Kabul International Airport did not have to happen. Something else that your listeners should know about. That family who just wanted to move the final resting place of their son, they had to pay for it themselves. Now, here we have a military that wants to pay for these gender reassignment surgeries.
And abortions.
But
won't move the body of a fallen hero.
Absolutely.
Sick. Tell you what, if I wasn't a Christian, I'd be in the flesh a lot more. Is this our final segment right now? I can't believe how we've had 2 shows. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West has just been such a wealth of information. We're going to have you back. Yeah. We can get his book, We Can Overcome, at Amazon. It's a remarkable story. And I want to come back at some point and talk about what's happening in Europe, what's happening with the World Economic Forum, what's happening globally, what's happening with China, with the BRICS meeting, and how our economy is about to change. We got lots to cover. You want to make sure you get Colonel West's podcast. Once again, it's
Steadfast and Loyal.
Steadfast and Loyal. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you as steadfast and loyal viewers tomorrow. God bless you.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.
Hey, let's take a moment right here and talk about something. You know, these programs are actually paid for by sponsors. And so the one thing that I always do is try to pick the sponsors that have the greatest value. Those are the ones that I myself believe in. Now, the Birch Gold Group is one of those key sponsors, and I'll tell you why. The economy is the area that I'm the most concerned about in terms of instability in the future. Do you know that right now, China and Russia and India is meeting with Saudi Arabians and South Africans to create an alternative economy, to basically crush the dollar? This is going to have a massive effect on the stock market, on real estate. It'll be a real shaking. But you don't have to be shaken, because there's a way you can protect your retirement, your 401ks, your IRAs, by connecting them in with gold. Gold is unique in history in that it's a place of stored value. In fact, those BRICS nations of Brazil and Russia, India and China, they're going to be backing themselves with, guess what? Gold. So be smart. I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/Birch and get a free information kit. Get knowledge, act quickly, don't wait. And they're going to be able to help you make a great decision on what to do. Remember, that information is free with no strings attached. Do it now, lancewallnau.com/Birch.